So behind-the-meter asset developers know how to make solar-only projects work, but integrating battery storage into a behind-the-meter PPA can be pretty challenging. The most obvious strategy you might try is deploying the battery to maximise the sale of behind-the-meter renewable generation, shifting what would otherwise be spilled solar into the customer load to earn higher PPA revenues. But even with a 20-year contract, the returns of this strategy are generally actually pretty poor. We could try and improve the returns further by also deploying the battery to reduce the customer supply costs. So for example, doing things like peak demand charge management. That can create additional value for the customer to justify higher PPA rates, but again, that often doesn't swing the business case enough to justify the battery. Let's dig into some modelling to get a sense of why. We've got three scenarios here: a solar-only consumption-based PPA, a solar and battery PPA, optimising the battery to maximise solar consumption, and a solar and battery PPA co-optimise the battery to also reduce customer supply cost. Now for easy comparison, we've kept the battery size and PPA rate consistent, but in practice you'd refine these further to ensure you meet your investment requirements. Now what we can see is that while our solar-only PPA achieved double-digit IRR, our solar and battery scenarios were actually worse. We can see that our co-optimised scenario did drive additional customer value, so we could perhaps increase the PPA rates, and that would increase the project returns, but it's still not an awesome investment. So what do we do about that? We could try and capture additional value in wholesale energy or ancillary service markets. Batteries are great at this. Now we can usually offer ancillary services pretty easily because these services don't require moving much energy, so don't really create opportunity cost for the PPA. But even in markets with only moderate battery penetration, these ancillary services are becoming pretty rapidly saturated and the value is declining. Now there can be more durable value available in wholesale energy markets. And in theory, we can deploy our behind-the-meter battery to capture high wholesale spreads when markets are volatile, and then to pivot and maximise PPA revenues when markets are flat. Now at Gridcog, we call this a Wholesale-Enhanced PPA. Now one of the challenges with this commercial strategy is the required energy accounting. Look at these energy flows and think about how they need to be priced. What you can see is that the customer needs to pay the retail supply cost for the grid energy that goes to their load. Now the customer should also pay for the solar energy they consume, either directly or indirectly via the battery at the agreed PPA price. And the solar and battery asset owner should pay the wholesale price for the grid energy that goes to the battery. We don't want the customer paying for that, and should earn the wholesale price for the energy they export. There'll also need to be some kind of settlement arrangement between the asset owner and the retailer or supplier to the site for the energy consumed by the customer that goes via the battery. Now, this is pretty complicated and there are multiple interesting topics to dig into on how to enable this kind of wholesale-enhanced PPA, like the required settings, the route to market options, the operational optimisation and settlement issues. For the purposes of this video, let's look at how pricing these energy flows differently in turn drives the need for a different dispatch model for the solar and battery system. The really key point here I want to reinforce is that developing this proposition for the customer and the financial model for investors isn't just some after-the-fact business model building exercise in Excel. It requires different dispatch optimisation driven by these different pricing arrangements. Let's look at a specific day to see how the battery is dispatched differently when it's a wholesale-enhanced PPA versus a standard behind-the-meter PPA. We'll start by looking at our wholesale-enhanced PPA. We can see on this day it does take advantage of that extreme market volatility you can see, causing the site to export into those two price peaks. On the other hand, when the battery is optimised to reduce the customer's supply cost, as well as earn PPA revenue, it does discharge into afternoon peak pricing, but it's clear it's not seeing or responding to the wholesale market events, and there's actually no side export. And lastly, looking at the self-consumption only battery, it's doing absolutely nothing. There's no excess solar to shift, so the battery is creating no value for the asset owner or the customer, despite being a really exciting day in wholesale energy markets. We can also see these energy flows in the Sankey chart in Gridcog that shows the flows between the assets at the site and how when we price these energy flows differently, the energy flows change. Clearly demonstrating how the dispatch optimisation is changing the way that battery operates in response to that pricing. And now let's finally look at the cash flow outcomes for the asset owner and the customer. And we can see that the wholesale-enhanced PPA delivers stronger commercial returns for the asset investor and a great outcome for the customer. So by enhancing our behind-the-meter PPA with wholesale market participation, we can significantly improve returns over a conventional solar-only or solar and BESS hybrid behind-the-meter PPA. Now we need to acknowledge that this does come at the cost of additional operational complexity and potentially additional revenue risk. Electricity retailers or suppliers who are supplying electricity to the site have a simpler path to pursuing this strategy, but it is still available to third-party behind-the-meter asset developers who operate in markets with the right regulatory settings and who have access to a route to market independent of the retailer, either directly if they have the scale to justify that, or via a third-party optimiser. So if you're looking at modelling and assessing wholesale-enhanced PPAs in your energy projects, reach out to the team. Thanks for watching.